As efforts are ongoing to repatriate another tranche of $500 million looted funds from the United States, Germany and France next month. The senior special assistant to the president on justice reform, Juliet Ibekako, said negotiation was in top gear and civil society organizations will be involved in the repatriation and the disbursement of the money.
The SA, who doubles as national coordinator on open government partnership, says the treatment of the first batch of $322 million had elicited confidence in the current administration with respect to management of funds. Joining me now from Benin City via Skype, the Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, Reverend David Ugola. David, it's good to have you join us right now. The National Assembly, House of Rep and Senate have passed the bill on the assets recovery and proceeds of crime bill. However, they await harmonization. But what will be the game changer considering this bill when it becomes law?
First, the Proceeds of Crime Bill will provide the asset recovery architecture for the country. It will provide a framework on how Nigeria will now be managing the asset recovery policies in the country. Just for your information, the bill has been harmonized, and we're waiting that before maybe tomorrow or next week, it will be passed on to the president for assent. And so we are very happy. We congratulate the Senate President, congratulate the House of Reps Speaker for this good job, particularly Senator Utazi and his colleague in the House for doing this fantastic job, because this is the only way Nigerian government will send a positive signal following the Global Forum on Asset Recovery Forum, GFA, meeting in the US in 2017. For us, the POCA bill will provide the framework in designing how Nigeria will manage asset recovery, particularly against the background when we're talking about creating institutions that will sustain governance in the country. Currently, what we have in the country, it will not bring that confidence. So if POCA, the Proceeds of Crime Bill, is passed into law, we will now have asset management agency in the country. Currently, all the assets recovered from proceeds of crimes are languishing in different anti-corruption agencies' offices across the country. That is not good enough. The whole basis of using civil forfeiture framework in dealing with grand corruptions in the country is to see that crime must not pay. And the only way to send a signal to change the behavioral norm in the country, where people see that government resources is for private pocket, is to see that these assets are taken and then used for the people.
All right, David, Nigerians have always been calling for the utilization of assets, especially when it comes to funds recovered from corrupt practices, saying that it should be tied to something instead of putting it back into the Federation account. Is this a way of responding to that call?
Exactly. I think this again will also provide that opportunity, because first, people want the fund recovered to be ring-fenced for a specific project so that people can track what the money is used for. And also people want to also refer to it as a legacy fund, because it's the only better way to send a strong message about how crime must not pay. And so we support that the money should be put into particular framework that people can easily track the money. And government should, as a matter of fact, design a reporting template, and I think the EITI, the Nigerian Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, can play a role on this, so that Nigerians can also continue to send a positive signal to other countries where our current resources are located, that if the money eventually returns, it can be used for specific project. What matters most is that is transparency and accountability, and Nigerian government have signed on to the GFA principle, and this principle explicitly clear the way on how government should ensure that when money is received from abroad, like we are discussing now, the US government is also demanding some kind of level of reporting template that will show confidence when the Abacha 3 returns to Nigeria, the $500 million that Mrs. Ibeka could refer to.
All right.
That money will be very useful if it is used for infrastructure that will help reduce poverty in Nigeria.
All right, David, the POCA bill, like you call it, the Proceeds of Crime bill, now, how does this complement, contradict, or even repeal the Executive Order 6 by the President, which also focus on assets recovery and management and forfeiture of assets from crime?
They are very complementary. They are not contradictory. As you know, the most important thing when tackling grand corruption is the issue of rule of law and fundamental human rights. Just to give you an insight, it's just when people asset is taken by the law authority or the anti-corruption agency, there's always the issue of human right and due process. And so what the POCA bill seeks to do is to ensure that the rule of law and the human right of the people are not abused. And even in the United States, where civil forfeiture is also being used by the anti-corruption agency in the US, that issue is also a very important one. So for Nigeria, when POCA bill becomes law, we're looking for innovative way of tackling corruption. You know, the criminal approach takes a long process, takes 20 years in instance in the country of Nigeria. But when you adopt the POCA bill, it provides a room for, again, adopting the civil forfeiture, the non-conviction-based approach. Because the most important thing is not by putting people in the guard room. We don't have enough prison to put these big criminals.
All right. So this is about proactivity. Okay.
Yes. It's about looking for the asset, which is this incentive, the driver. Because the reason why people steal money is to buy a house in Maitama, to buy a house in Port Harcourt, buy a house in London, and then fly their children to the best schools of the world.
All right, we have to leave you here now. Reverend David Ugolo, thank you very much. We have to leave you here now. Reverend Ugolo is the Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice. Thank you very much.
You're watching TVC Breakfast. The presidency says efforts are ongoing to repatriate another tranche of $500 million looted funds from the United States, Germany and France next month.
The senior special assistant to the president on justice reform, Juliet Ibebaku, said negotiation was in top gear and civil society organizations will be involved in the repatriation and disbursement of the money.
The SA, who doubles as a national coordinator on open government partnership, says the treatment of the first batch of $322 million has elicited confidence in the current administration with respect to management of funds. Joining me from Benin City via Skype is Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, David Ugolo. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Now, the government is expecting another $500 million tranche. How would you expect the government to go about utilizing this? Because other monies that the government has, that has been repatriated has been enshrined in controversy, so to speak.
Again, let me thank you for this invitation. I apologize for missing the first episode, and I just want to make this clarification before I respond to your question. Mrs. Juliet Ibebaku was the former national coordinator of OGP, Open Government Partnership. She made that clarification at the pre-OGP summit 2 days ago in Abuja. And I just wanted to put that clarification so that there is no misconception out there in the public. That was what the Guardian newspaper reported. She's the former national coordinator.
All right.
Yeah. So let me say that the looted asset policy work of the government, again put in context, is something that, again, TVC have played a major role in terms of raising public awareness within the country and internationally. That is very remarkable, and that has also contributed to the whole progressive policy we have been seeing in the last few months, particularly against the background that transitioning from Abacha 1 to Abacha 2, now we are expecting Abacha 3, is something great lessons that the whole world is looking forward to. But most importantly is the Abacha 2 that we are currently monitoring across the entire country. As you recall, the Abacha 2, the $322.5 million that came from Switzerland, which currently sits at the central bank, is currently being distributed to the very poorest of the poor across the entire country. As civil society who engaged the Ministry of Justice in an MOU to keep an eye on how the money is moving across the country, we came out with a report, a preliminary report for the first field monitor we have carried out across 16 states, and said that the money is getting to the poor. Then there are challenges. Some of those challenges is being addressed by the grievance mechanism. We want to say that this is a very important thing that the government must recognize and begin to use to raise profile of the stolen asset work in the country.
But then some have said that this is just providing temporary respite for the poor, because even the president recently says he's not happy with the state or the level of poverty in the country.
Yes, very good. And I think for the president now to be focusing on the issue of poverty is something that, for us who are working around the relationship between asset recovery and sustainable development goal, particularly SDG 16.4, we are very happy because we need a political will to reverse the current poverty profile in the country. Without the political elite focusing on the issue of poverty in the country, you will agree with me that even resource allocation will be a challenge. And for the president of Nigeria, in receiving his cabinet and responding to say that social investment program is an important component of his policy, is something that we must commend the president for. But now, to walk the talk, how do we translate such a political will to reality that will impact positively in the life of the people? I think that's the real key challenge. And
All
as
right.
civil society working on the issue of asset recovery in the country,
All right, David Ugolo, we have to leave it at this point. Thank you for your time on TVC Breakfast. Not to be said there.
But it's quite interesting the civil society organization are being involved in this right now.
Of course, but how will that translate into transparency is another issue.